Hello, everyone, and welcome to another super exciting episode of Relating to DevSecOps, where we explore the development, security, and operational issues of today so we can solve real world problems with people that face them. I'm your host, Ken Toller, and a new face today, super excited, introducing Tanya Janca, who you should all know and have heard of before. She is also known as SheHacksPurple, best-selling author of this Alice and Bob series, Learn Secure Coding, Alice and Bob Learn Application Security, many awards. Tanya, OWASP Lifetime Distinguished Member and Hacker of the Year, spoken everywhere. We hear her voice all the time, and I cannot wait to deep dive into topics around DevSecOps. Tanya, welcome to Relating to DevSecOps.
Thank you so much for having me, Ken. This is great.
Yeah, I'm really excited today. We've been really trying to get folks like yourself on the show to talk about application security, DevSecOps, real world practical solutions, and I think we had a lovely call together to really think about how we wanted to approach this. And a lot of, I think, what the things that we had talked about together were, keeping things simple, trying to make things practical and feel out like solutions that work rather than paying lip service to application security and development and things like that. So the way that I wanted to kick this off is, you've had experience across a bunch of organizations and seen things that work and don't work. And one of the things that we focused on was just the number of policies and standards and things that are out there that say a lot of things, but don't really do a lot. So, why are security policies, in your eyes, fundamentally broken, or are they just poorly communicated? What are the things that we need to be changing in application security and in DevSecOps to make things useful?
I honestly so I was a developer and then I switched into security. And when I was a developer, I remember being told, oh, well, this isn't according to policy. I'm like, what policy? What the heck are you talking about? And they're like, it's on our intranet. I'm like, where? And they're like, you should know that. I'm like, when? How would I know that? And they're like, oh, when you click OK, when you log into your computer, you agree to 27,000 things. I'm like, no one reads that crap. And they were aghast that I did not know tons and tons and tons of policies. And I'm like, when would I have ever learned that? I've worked here 2 years. And if I don't know it, I assure you the rest of my team doesn't know it. So how should we know these things? And they're like, I'm like, do you announce it when you do a new policy? They're like, you should just check our internal webpage all the time. And I was just like, do you think I don't have work to do? Like, I
Yeah,
live for
yeah.
this? Right. And then I went to read it. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. That doesn't work. This isn't true. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, did you like ever talk to a developer before you wrote this? And they're like, we don't need to. I'm like, oh, yes, you do. And so then I switched over into security. And a lot of the security policies that I saw, I'm like, this doesn't make sense, or this isn't true, or this isn't accurate, or this isn't clear. So I remember reading session IDs should be ephemeral. And that was the instructions. I'm like, that means short-lived. That's what that word means. How am I supposed to program short-lived? And also, how long is it supposed to be? Do I need to encrypt it? Like, was there any other details that you thought you might want to tell me? And so I have found that some of the places I've worked, their policies weren't written by practitioners. And then as a result, there's like this disconnect. And so when I got charged with writing policy, so I had this weird job where I got hired to be a pen tester and launch their pen testing program. And then someone way high up was very nervous about it and would not approve any tools for me and would not let me do any pen tests. They just blocked me over and over. And so I was like, I'm going to write a policy. I'll get back at you. And so I spent 9 months writing and approving a secure coding policy for our entire department. I did a bunch of other things too, but I learned about writing policy. And so I started it and then I showed it to the devs and they're like, well, that's an old technology we don't use, and that's this and this. And so we went back and forth. And by the time it was done, they're like, this is the first helpful one we've seen. And I'm like, well, it turns out I just need tons of feedback. So I feel like it's about a lack of communication. And if we don't, like, so now when I write a policy, I'm like, here's a draft. I need feedback. And I hold multiple consultations. I get tons of feedback. Then after that, I'm like, okay, it's time to socialize. And so I'll do presentations about it. And if I can, I'll teach workshops on it. And I do that so that everyone knows it. And then it's like, it's going to be on our wiki. I'm going to have it like attached everywhere I can think of. I'm going to have lots of different pages linked to it. I'm going to make it so no one does not know where this is. It's very easy to find. And so I focus almost like on evangelizing the thing that I did. And then I get better results. I also try to make things super short, Ken. So like, let's say you have to write a 30-page document because that's where you work.
Yeah.
Um, for those that are just listening and not watching, I rolled my eyes in a really big, ridiculous way.
Yeah.
Um, but so I've worked at places where I've been overruled and it's like it has to be long. And so what I would do is do the first page I called TLDR. That's too long, didn't read. And it's like, I need these 5 things from you if you're going to build one of those. And then by doing that, if I can get developers to read 5 or 6 or 10 page, like 10 lines rather than 30 pages, then, some of them do need to read all those pages, but most of them don't. And most of them are willing to read half a page, right? So I find I just get it across a lot better. And so I feel like a lot of policymakers are probably overwhelmed. They're probably trying to create 27 million policies on topics that they don't even know, that they've never really worked in, and they're struggling. And then as a result, they're not like prioritizing maybe feedback, maybe not prioritizing socialization of the policy. They're like, oh, it'll be fine. And I'm like, but it's clearly not, right? Like if no one's following it, clearly, if everyone's following it, then it is fine. But if no people aren't following it, then it's not.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
do you think that, do you think you speak a lot about evangelization and communication, and one of my mentors has always told me, you have to keep saying it, right? And evangelize, and you can't just say it once and expect people to read it, which is a very similar theme to what you're talking about. Do you think that that's the main, I guess, attribute or variable to success? Or is it the simplicity? Because one of the things I want to sort of balance, and I think that folks struggle with, is, like you said, there's a lot of length in these policies because maybe they feel like you need to have a bunch of information so that there's a reference for someone to go to. They don't necessarily have to memorize it. Or is it that we need to keep them shorter and simpler and less detailed? And then how do we balance that with the problem you identified earlier, which is, well, if I don't tell you exactly what to do and how to do it, then maybe you don't understand what I'm trying to get across, or understand what the actual control is that you have to perform or develop actually is. So how do you balance that or think about that within policies and standards?
So in my ideal dream world, and what I could do when I was a dev, is so I would have like a policy and then either a standard or a guideline that went with it. And so the policy is you must abide by this evergreen document so that I wasn't constantly updating it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then the evergreen document would have the details. So the policy might be like, here are the 28 things, and it's very direct, and that's it. And then the guideline, and ideally it's a wiki page. And so it has it, and then each item has its own page. And so I remember the first time I did this was at that place I was telling you about, where I just wrote policy all the time, and I kind of wanted to pull my hair out, but I digress. I'm not meant to write policy all day. That's not what I was put on this earth to do. And that's okay. But so we made a wiki. And so for each item, there was a page associated with it. And then we would put tons of code snippets. And then on top of that, when something was pen tested, if that part of the code was thoroughly tested, then we would copy it in there and we would put like, this code's been tested, please reuse. And so by doing that, so some people might call that a secure code library. So I've done it where we have samples in our code repository, and I've done it where it's a wiki and it's like kind of evergreen and it's constantly changing. Whatever works for you. But if you can have a developer just copy and paste. And so that place where I worked, we just did Java. That's all we did. Everyone lived and breathed Java all day. So it was super easy to just put samples because everyone's doing the same language, right? If you're working at a place with 20 languages, that becomes harder, but it's still really helpful. And so place after place that I've worked, I'm like, let's reuse known good code. And then if we have a bug in that code, we can fix it everywhere. right? Like depending upon the way you do it, if you do it with templating or whatever. But so if possible, if you can turn it into like a web page style wiki type of document where there's a link for every single item and then you can add tons of details. Because some of us our communications, so my communication style is red. It's like be brief, be blunt, and then please be gone. I
I
just
like
want
it.
the high level and then I'm going to go do it. But a lot of us are also blue, which is I need every single detail I can get in order to do a good job. And until I have all those details, I'm just spinning. And I've worked with lots and lots of developers that are like that who make amazing, beautiful, perfect applications, right? And so you need to be able to accommodate all the communication styles. A lot of us are in the middle of those two, which is totally cool. But I feel like if you can do both, you're golden.
Yeah. Do you think folks need a technical writer to do this type of work? I mean, you mentioned you're pulling your hair out with these policies and standards, and some folks we work with are small teams. Maybe three security people, four security people. How do they approach something like this, where maybe they're looking at this advice and going, a whole wiki, I can't even get like a time to do a simple policy. What's advice for them, or maybe how what would you say to them to convince folks to get some of that help?
I feel like we can't expect people to do what the security team wants if we don't communicate it effectively, right? Like there'll be some perfect employees that read minds, but most of us can't read minds. I don't know about you, Ken, but I'm not very good at it yet. And so, and people tend not to be able to read my mind, which I feel is reasonable. And so we have to tell them what we want, right? And so if you're a security team with three people, you have a bunch of choices. So not to toot all my own horns, but I wrote a book, and in the book, I'm like, please copy this and make this your new policy. And I literally wrote that as one of the homework assignments.
Yeah.
And and so I did it that way on purpose because I really want people to like, let's say you're doing React. I have this whole section on React. I'm like, just make this your guideline. Just copy and paste it. That's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying really hard to make people write better code. And so I give express permission in the book, like, please adopt this. And so that is one thing you could do if you're trying to do secure coding in various languages. And I also have guidance for like how to secure serverless WebSockets, etc. Right? So reuse things that you think are good. So first of all, I mean, read it. And if you're like, this sucks, don't use it. But if you think it's good, then you should apply it. And if you are like, I don't understand, so maybe you come from a system administration background, not a developer background, you're still cool. Get one of your devs to read it and be like, does this make sense? Like, we're thinking of adopting this. Like, what do you think? And then hopefully they're like, this does not suck. And then you can adopt it, right? And so adopting things that already exist. I know that SANS has a page of policies that they share for all sorts of stuff. And I remember adopting their policy on security tool usage. I remember a consultant giving me a rules of engagement document for whenever we had a pen tester over. I was like, yeah, this is perfect. Like I read it. I'm like, this is so smart. I'm like, can I use this with other consultants? He's like, yeah, if you want to not have things burned down, you probably should. Um, so reusing things that you know are good. I feel like I'm kind of surprised there isn't a company that just sells an entire policy suite. I work with IANS Research, and I've written tons of policies for them. So if people are an IANS client, you can just go on the portal and you can just download all these policies I wrote for them. But I'm surprised that there isn't like a company just selling that to the public as a package because I know that they have that for instance, when I started my little training company in Canada, SheHacksPurple, I met with this team where they write all of the like HR and other types of policies, and they just guide you on basically like don't step in it from a legal perspective and when you're starting a small business, and it was super helpful. And it wasn't very expensive at all. It was like $500 or something for literally like every HR policy you could ever want, employee handbook, everything. I was like, wow, this is a steal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe that is a startup idea for someone.
Well, I know that there are a couple of companies that are doing so, like the Vantas of the world, the compliance as a services of the world are selling that as a platform where you can sort of fill in the blanks of your policy and things like that. But I I almost prefer the things in your book because the problem I have with these pre-made policies, having come from the consulting world, is, you have all of these boilerplate policies, you're putting them in place, and sometimes they just don't make sense. And folks are like, "Oh man, that was an easy button. We put it in place, but we don't abide by all of this," and you end up with all this junk. But I think what I really appreciate about your book and about the checklist that you had mentioned that you have, that's only 9 pages long, like get started with this, copy this, use this, is that I can read it in less than 30 minutes and understand sort of things that I need to do, and I can build off of that. I think the problem that I always face with super simple policies is adoption by the executive team, or like you said, the organization that wants the 30-page policy because they feel like it can't possibly be this simple. So I do know that like it exists. It's just, practically, I prefer the simple approach. And so, that's why I'm sort of asking about the balance, and where it goes. So I think this sort of leads me to my next question, which is, in large organizations, governments and big business, enterprise and things, do you think that they'd be able to take something like your simple checklist, and would that get adopted? And if not, how would you convince those executive teams to adopt that simple policy?
So I'm actually trying to do this right now. So I worked for the Canadian Public Service, so the government, for 13 and a half years before I was recruited by Microsoft. And so I have a lot of heart involved in wanting to take care of Canada, and all the people I love that live there, right?
That's
And
wonderful.
so, thank you. So I'm actually always lobbying them and kind of bothering them to improve their security. And I've sent lots of letters, like a few to the Prime Minister's office, to the Canadian Revenue Agency, to a bunch of different areas. So right now I'm working with a member of Parliament named Alistair McGregor, and basically he's my like where I live, our member of parliament. And so we've met a few times, and now him and I have sent joint letters to the head of shared services, or the minister that's in charge of it, and then the head of public safety as well. Because what I'm seeing when I visit Canadian governmental websites is not good. And also, there's just been article about different government departments being breached. I believe the CRA, that's our IRS, so the revenue agency, basically the tax man.
Yeah.
They've had something like 42 material breaches, according
Wow.
to CBC. Like, I'm sorry, but one is too much.
Hmm.
Um, and just to be clear, like I used to work there. I have a lot of friends that still work there that I really like, but we're doing something wrong if that's happening, right? So either they don't have the resources they need, they don't have the training they need, they don't have the tools they need. Like something's wrong. We need to fix it. And I think that what I can help with as an individual is education, right? And so I've sent the policy to them, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to suggest this as a guideline for you to adopt. When I worked in the government, I wrote many secure coding guidelines for different departments I worked at, but I know a lot more now. I'm way smarter. Um, and I also have learned better about how to communicate things more clearly and more precisely so that it's easier and more obvious what you're supposed to do. Because in the past, like if you don't understand something 100%, it's really hard to explain it to someone else. And so I wasn't always perfect, essentially. And so I feel like this one is pretty darn good. And so we sent it to them hoping that they will consider it. So we're waiting for their response. That was just like 2 weeks ago, which in government time is a very short time.
Yeah.
Um, but then after that, I was thinking of starting a letter writing campaign, and also like talking to the privacy commissioner, because you can't have privacy if you don't have security. Google's proved you could totally have security and no privacy.
Exactly.
However,
Yeah.
you can't really guarantee privacy if you don't have good security. And I know the privacy commissioner definitely, obviously cares about that. And I know the head of public safety cares about safety. It's just they probably have 100 people coming at them and they're like, who's this weird lady? And it's like, I have an MP with me. Like, I know stuff and things. Please listen.
Yeah.
Because right now, across the Canadian government, like just when you go visit a website, it's just like, why are your cookie settings not there? Why do you not have like the basic security headers? Like, why is this not happening? Why is that? I also hear like rumors and grumblings from various people that I won't repeat about things that aren't in order. And so there's no bounty program that I can report these things to. So I just like call people that I used to work with and tattle.
Yeah.
But like some of them have left, and so I have very few contacts now of who I can tattle to. But yeah, I feel like we need a broader approach. I also think that, to be quite blunt, if we have one guideline that every single department has to do, it's so much easier to test. It's so much easier to validate that we are following it. It's so much easier for everyone to learn because it's the same no matter where you go. Like, not that I'm the most correct person in the whole world, but it's like, I assure you it's better than whatever you've got.
Yeah. Do
Because
you
I
do
know,
you
because I
get
read a bunch of them.
Yeah. Do you get when you're submitting these things for folks that are thinking like, maybe I should submit to my, I'm in the US, but my state, sites or something like that, and they want to get involved with something like that. Are you seeing pushback or just lack of response? Is it just slow? Do you get any feedback from those individuals or teams that say, this isn't going to work, or like what is your feedback cycle with them so far?
So at first I wrote the Canadian Revenue Agency and they ignored me. So then I wrote the Prime Minister's office to tell on them for ignoring me. And then they answered. And they just said, they denied a bunch of things and said, we can't tell you any of those things because security. So then I wrote back again and they ignored me. So then I traveled to Ottawa and I spoke at a conference and I cornered their CIO in the hallway and gave him crap.
That's
And
amazing.
I'm like, you're not following your policies. Like, how do you know? I'm like, I wrote it when I worked for you. And he's like, this is going to be terrible. I'm like, I don't mean to be rude. It's just this is so important to me.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so then he made them write me back. And again, it was more because security, we can't tell you anything. And I was like, yeah, but I can see with my eyes and I'm telling you these things. And so then I ended up leaving it after a certain point because I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And so I'm like, I'm going above your head. I also got risky business to like write a blog post about the problems that I saw at CRA. Like I wrote in my blog, I went on podcasts, like I really tried hard. And like when I see my friends that work there, they're like, thanks for being a pain in our butt. Like, you're welcome. Um, like we're still on friendly terms, but I just like I suspect it's a resourcing issue. I suspect it's like we don't have any money for training, so we'll just do the best we can. And I'm like, no, you deserve to upgrade your people, right? Like they all deserve to learn. So right now, what I'm doing is waiting on a response. I'm not sure if I'm going to get one, but basically, if I don't after a certain point, I'll write the Prime Minister's office and complain about that. But I don't know if you know and you don't keep up on Canadian politics, and it's okay. I forgive you if that is
yeah.
true, listener. But we are about to go into an election. And right now, if you're not hiding under a rock, you can tell that the Canadian public are fairly teed at the party that is holding majority government. And there is a strong likelihood that they are not going to be put back in power. And if they are, it will most certainly be a minority. But it's highly likely that we are switching parties that will be the boss. And so I'm going to just have to approach them in a few months as well, right? Like, and maybe they will listen more, right?
Yeah, it
Who
sounds
knows?
like, I mean, just very jealous of your persistence, and admire the persistence. I think, you know, a lot of folks would have given up after the first rejection or ignored response, but I mean, good on you for keeping at it and keeping folks on their toes and responding to you. I mean, that's something I mean, that is a skill that I don't think we exercise enough in security, and being able to just continue to push and push and push until we get an answer. Do you have any secrets to how you do that without being too much of a pain in the rear?
Um, so I mean, you'd have to ask them if I'm too much of a pain in the rear, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure that there's someone that is just like, oh God, another letter from Tanya, jeez. But I do think that all of them want to do better, genuinely. Like when I worked at CRA, those people really cared. Um, I actually really loved my teammates there. One of them, we would go to the gym and he was like our personal trainer and he would joke with me. He's like, if you don't do more squats, then you can't have Starbucks. I'm like, Steve, I'm an adult. Of course I can. He's like, I know, but pretend, go with me. Pretend, pretend.
Yeah, I'm
Like
trying
it
to
was,
motivate you here. Yeah.
but it was actually like a really great place to work with people that seemed to really, really be passionate about security. And so like maybe also it is helping them if like an external voice is like, hey, this is a problem. Like let them go do the thing. Right. So however, like you'd have to ask them what their real opinion is because people tend to be pretty nice to me because I come at them with a big smile. Um, but I do think that I think that all of us, it is our job to advocate. Like, so us security professionals, you and me, a lot of the people that are listening, like I advocate in my personal life that my family use a password manager, that my children use good passwords when they log into Roblox, that like that we are protecting our personal information, right? And I do that with the people that I know and that I feel I can personally influence. But I think also, especially me as a person that is sort of like a kind of like a public figure because I speak so much and write books and all of that, I think it is our job to advocate for a better world. And if we're not doing it, who's gonna do it? Right? And I know that there are people in the government who care, but they don't always have the power. And I don't know if you know, but when you work in the federal public service, you are not allowed to publicly comment ever on politics or government policy. So all of them have a gag order.
Wow.
100% of them, which really upset me when I worked there. So I would write songs about American politics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a hot topic these days. I mean, speaking
Yes.
speaking of, I've had a couple of conversations, especially in the current political climate and with everything sort of going on in the world, application security, security professionals often wonder, how do I do things like you are doing, getting more involved with governments? How can I change the world? I think that maybe this is too big of a question for this podcast, but I would love to hear your answer is, what is your perspective on how application security, software security, product security people can work to do things to help change the world with their passion? I think a lot of folks are passionate about security and think about it, but many folks will, be a pen tester and be like, what am I really doing? I'm finding a bunch of cross-site scripting or SQL injection vulnerabilities. I'm not really moving the needle for anything major versus maybe somebody that works in energy or works in the government or is a public servant. How can folks in the private industry really take their skills and move something to change the world for the better, as you say?
So what I'm doing is called lobbying. And I would love it if groups like OWASP, ISSA, ISACA, etc., if they started a part of their volunteer organization that lobbied for better government stuff. DEF CON has something called the Policy Village. And when I spoke in Ottawa so I've spoken in Ottawa a whole bunch of times, and I always run up to the Treasury Board office. And so I used to work at Treasury Board as well. And I'm like, what's and and then I hassle them, which is what I do. And they're used to it because when I worked there, I was the same. Um, and we had the policy village, and what they're trying to do is change public policy. And then we had Treasury Board over in the sponsors area, and neither of them would go talk to each other. And I was like, what? You guys both love the same thing. We should just be hanging out having coffee. We should be giving high fives. Right. And like neither of them would cross the floor, so I kept walking back and forth. And I was like, oh, you should come over here. Oh, you guys should go over there. Oh, we want to do this. You guys should do that. Right. And I'm like, why am I walking back and forth as like the person that was on a panel at the Policy Village? And so I was trying to reach out to, so I don't know the people from DEF CON that do the Policy Village. I know the people who are from the Ottawa version of it, if that makes sense. And like, I've been trying to reach out to them. I'm like, what we should do is invite Treasury Board to DEF CON. I know that might sound a little odd, but like, clearly we care about this, right? Like, we should find a way to engage together. There's this group called Hackers on the Hill, where apparently they try to do that as well. So involving yourself in either of those organizations is one way. Writing letters is actually quite powerful. What I did is I wrote letters to my MP, and he came to my meetup in person. He's
Wow.
come a bunch of times now. Yeah. And then he actually ended up seeing my kids at the pool. Anyway, I'm like, hi, what's up, member of parliament? But I feel like we need to start, we need to reach out. They're not good at asking for feedback. A lot of them think we don't care because we don't reach out. So calling your, like, it is their job to take your call, right? Like we're technically their boss, like the members of parliament, or in your case, what are they called?
Like state representatives or
State representatives.
or Senate or whoever you're voting for. First of
Your
all,
elected
vote.
officials.
Yes, all of your
Yeah.
get out there and vote first of all, and then contact them.
We should definitely vote. As a person that was the CISO for one of the elections, the moment I was legal to vote, I have voted in every single election. I was allowed to except one because I was quite ill. And then from then on, I voted in advance to make sure I never miss it. This is your chance to speak.
Yeah,
Who wants to be silenced? And that whole, oh, it doesn't matter because, I can't really affect anything. If all the people that didn't vote in an election all voted together, you can elect anyone you want.
I agree. Yeah. And I think that a lot of folks stop at voting, right? And I think maybe they just don't feel like they have the right tools to say what they want to say or talk about what they're passionate about. And I think that just talking to you is really opening the door to you don't have to talk about just politics, talk about your profession, your specialization, figure out like things that you are personally irritated about or want to get out there and talk about. I think from my perspective, one of the things that has been maybe not a fear, but a concern is, I'm a technical person. I'm working on technical problems, and I'm trying to solve the intricacies of like the organizations that I work for, and going to a policy or treasury or sort of meetup or village, you almost feel lost because it's like I don't know what I'm doing here and what to even say, and writing policies, maybe it's boring or maybe it's so. What does it take to get into the meat of that and make that transition from I'm solving these technical problems to let me help write policies for the government, or let me help look at these standards or read the legalese or the policies that go into government and make sense of them. Any advice for folks that are in that frame of mind where they're maybe not comfortable reading long documents, and the same folks you're talking about, maybe the red communicators walking into these
So,
villages?
so now that we have ChatGPT and Claude, etc., we can cheat. So you can literally just point them at one of those documents and say, could you summarize this for me in more simplistic language? And it will. It's pretty great, actually. And so that is one cheat that you can do. And I strongly recommend it if you're like, this is a lot of legalese. What does this stuff mean? And it will break things down for you. So that's one thing to start with. I'd also say, so your government is doing things all the time. So my government has meetings sometimes. So for instance, like the municipal government had a debate and I went and I asked questions. Actually, I think I just listened. I usually am a question asker, but people asked all the questions I wanted. So I think I actually just got to sit. But there are all sorts of different opportunities to participate in different situations. My significant other was actually the governmental representative for our little tiny village that we live in a few years ago, and made a whole bunch of changes for the better. You can run for local government. Like it's an actual thing people do. You don't have to be really old and really rich to do it. Turns out you're allowed to do it whenever you want. That is an option too. You can volunteer. So I volunteered for my provincial member of government before. And I remember trying to volunteer for the municipal one, but she kept saying no. And I was really upset because I was like, but I want to help you, damn it.
I'm volunteering,
Yeah. So instead I went for provincial, but which is a state in Canada. It's the equivalent of a state. And I helped and I learned a lot. And then I decided I wasn't going to run for government because I was like, wow, that's a lot of work. Um,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I work hard, and darn, those people work hard. Um, but by volunteering, he was willing to hear my opinions on various things. You can literally book time with your member of government if, assuming you don't act like a crazy person where you're like, you know, using aggressive language, you're behaving in a way that might make them feel unsafe because you're like really ticked off. But if you're like, hey, listen, I work in cybersecurity, I'm kind of an expert in stuff. I have some concerns about the way that I see our government conducting itself. I have some ideas that I'd like to pass by you. Generally, that sounds pretty attractive. I'd like to help you solve problems. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes also like keep your eye out because in Canada, I forget what they call themselves now. Their website is cyber.gc.ca. Yes, they name themselves cyber. I know we're called InfoSec. But
Yeah.
anyway, they used to be called the Canadian Security Establishment. I don't know what they're called now.
Okay.
But despite their rebrand, what they did was a call for ideas. And so I sent them like a letter, lots of things. But then I put an open letter on my blog to them, and then I encouraged all of my followers and all of my newsletter subscribers to write them because I was like, they need everyone's feedback, not just Tanya's.
Yeah.
Um, I want everyone to tell them their thoughts. And like one of my main things is why isn't the cyber department teaching all of the rest of the departments? Teach us the cybers. Come on.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
like when I worked in the government, the only option at the time was SANS, and with the exchange, that was about 10,000 Canadian dollars.
Yeah,
And
Sam's
at
is
the time,
is
yeah,
expensive. No joke.
yeah. And my budget was 2,000. And they wouldn't let me save it up for 5 years.
No.
Um, and so what
I
that
can't.
meant was no training. That's not acceptable, right? And so anyway, I strongly encourage all of you to try to help. And sometimes you can just say, listen, like I am a cyber professional and I specialize in these things, and like if there is a volunteer opportunity, I would be interested.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
it goes a
get
long way.
involved. I mean, I think that it just comes down to like get involved and don't be afraid to put your face and your words out there, your foot out there to just get involved. And I mean, yes, the state representative route in the U.S. especially is a even your HOA. Like honestly, if you just want to go around to like homeowners associations that have really poor websites and have a bunch of financial information just out there. Really good place to volunteer that no one will say no to because everyone wants to have an opinion at an HOA, right? um, so I want to shift gears a little bit in the final sort of tail end here to talk about your book. And we mentioned a little bit with the checklist and sort of feedback that you've gotten in the government about using simple policies and working through that. Um, but I had a chance to read through it and definitely love like the different sections and the approach because I think it sits next to on my shelf next to the Web Application Hackers Handbook as a reference for how do I approach a software development lifecycle. And for folks that are maybe uh, new to you or have read your first book, how does this differ, and how is someone going to use this book versus Alice and Bob and application security?
So the new book, Alice and Bob Learn Secure Coding, is just about coding. It is about building better applications. I guess the last third is about a secure system development lifecycle, but guess what that is? Building secure applications. Where the first book is about how to be an application security professional and how to run a security program, the second book is I'm a developer and I need to write better code. And so you can use it in a lot of different. Oh, the other thing about my books is they're weird because I'm weird. And it's true. Come on, Ken.
We're
And
all
so,
weird. We're all weird, Tanya. Like, I mean, if you're not weird in security, you're not gonna last.
so I'm dyslexic and I have ADHD. And so I wanted to make the absolutely most accessible book I could. So I have things in a lot of bite-sized pieces. I have a lot of like breakout content where it's like tip or story or analogy or example. And I have the characters, Alice and Bob, have various things happen to them throughout the book. They meet different people, they have different experiences because it's the story that you often remember rather than the syntax. And hopefully then you can remember and go look up the syntax in the book. And so both of my books are like that. I try to make them as easy to read as possible because a lot of adults, um, we don't sit down and read textbooks for a reason because it's hard and I wanted
Yep.
it to be easier. And so the new book, the way I would use it is if you are currently programming in a certain language, I cover 10 languages and 8 frameworks. Go look it up and read that section to start and see if any of it makes sense to you. There's for each language and each framework, there's a part where it says, this is what you should do. And then there's a section, this is what you should not do. So you could go grep through all your code and just see if you're doing any of those things you shouldn't be doing. And you could fix it. And then you are a tiny hero today, right?
Yeah.
No, but it's true. And
Yep.
then I would suggest when you have more time, reading section 1 and going through and learning the advice that applies to every single language. Because this is overarching advice of how to build really good software. So even if your language isn't covered, I've got you covered. And so go through section 1 a bit at a time. Then when you're ready, look at section 3. So this is a system development lifecycle with security woven through it, but from your perspective rather than the security engineer's perspective, which is how my first book is written. So it's like, they're going to do a pen test on my app. Like, what should I expect? What is that like? How am I going to receive the report? When I receive the report, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? This is overwhelming. I'm invited to a threat model. What the heck does that mean? And the idea is I wanted to prepare them to know what their responsibilities are, how to show up and look awesome, right? And eventually, if they're interested, how to transition into security. Because, spoiler alert, I want some of you to join our field.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not at all biased. It's not like we need lots of help. Um, but I'm hoping that if someone just really, really likes it, that maybe they would consider transitioning. And so, no pressure, but I wanted to make it easier if they can. And so, one of the ways to do that is becoming a security champion where you work, learning more about security, being that trusted resource on your team. And then eventually, if you still really like it, I mean, there's no better hire in the world for the AppSec team than your best security champion, right? And
True.
so, I explain all those things in the book, and I want them to know what's coming because when I was a dev, I remember they're like, we have a new tool and we're going to scan your app. And then they're like, here's your report. Your app really sucks.
Always. That's always the, yeah, I mean, it makes everybody feel so bad.
I know. And I didn't understand like what the testing meant and why they were doing it and like what I was supposed to do about it. And then like imagine attending a threat model if you've never heard of that anymore. It's like we're gonna do what? We're gonna evil brainstorm what can go wrong? Why would we do that? Why are you so mean? And so I want it to seem less intimidating. And I also want them to see the value of what's happening. And also, I guess, try to get their buy-in if I can.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I love the direction of the book. I think it's similar that if one of the pieces of advice we say is like go to developer conferences, and just go to some of these talks and spend some time with engineers and developers and folks that are outside of the security field. And you're always shocked, especially if you do a security talk at a developer conference about how basic you are feeling what you're saying is to the audience and how sort of eye-opening it is. And this is really, I don't know of another book that is geared towards developers that is focused on security. There are some, framework books that have security elements, and you're like, okay, I'm glad they put it in there. But I love that there's a resource for developers to go grab that they can learn security but still be in the development world. And that is like a huge gift to the community and to security, and really appreciate what you've done here.
Thank you so much, Ken. It was so much work. And so I'm really hoping it helps people. Um, Yeah, I am doing my best as a one-person army to try to
Yeah,
move us all forward. And so all the other people getting in and helping and calling their members of parliament and volunteering and doing and just even just sharing knowledge with your teammates. All of that adds up to us being safer. Every single effort.
totally agreed. Totally agreed. We'll wrap up there, but is there any final words, anything you want to get out there or promote, or any talks or conferences or things? Where can people find you? Where can they contact you? Where can they see you as we close out today?
So the best way to keep track of me is to join my free newsletter at newsletter.shehackspurple.ca. If you join my newsletter, you're going to get an invite soon. So in the coming months, I'm planning to do free live streams with a lesson for every single chapter of the book. And there's 15 chapters, so it's going to take a while. Um, and so I'm not sure which month I'm starting it because I'm away for almost all of May. So I was thinking of starting in June. But basically, they'll be free, they'll be live, and members of the audience can ask questions, and then they're going to be recorded. So if you miss it, just like the last book, you can just watch it later. So my first book, people still watch all the old videos
That's
because they're
awesome.
still valid. And so just look up She Hacks Purple. That's me everywhere. So if I'm on Twitter or Blue Sky or wherever it is that you are, that's generally me. And the newsletter is the best way to keep track of all the places I'm going to be, like NDC, RSA, Hacker Summer Camp this summer, etc.
Great.
Because yeah, I'm a moving target, Ken.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how you stay safe, right? Keep moving. Well, Tanya, thank you so much for joining us and for spending time sharing your thoughts and your book and your expertise. It's been a real pleasure, and thanks again. And to the audience, we'll see you next time.